You know, for almost a full year, it really looked like diplomacy between the US and Iran was gonna work. And then, poof! In just a few days, the whole thing went up in flames. Hope was just gone, replaced by open war. So, what on earth happened? Let's get into it.
Okay, so let's mark the date on the calendar. February 28th, 2026. That's the day everything changed. After all these months of really tense, kind of behind-the-scenes talks, the world basically woke up to find the Middle East teetering on the edge of a huge regional war. And those first few hours, they were just absolute chaos. First, the U.S. and Israel kick off this massive joint operation. They're calling it Operation Epic Fury. And their very first strike takes out Iran's Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. I mean, right off the bat. Iran's response? It was immediate and it was everywhere. They launched missiles all across the region, and then made this huge threat to shut down the Strait of Hormuz, which, as you know, is the world's most critical choke point for oil.
So, the big question is, how did we get here? I mean, how does a whole year of careful, painstaking diplomacy just collapse, and so spectacularly, into an all-out regional war? That's what we need to figure out.
All right, to really get a grip on this war, we've got to rewind the tape a bit. We need to look back at those final, failed attempts to find peace. You know, it turns out the road to this conflict was really paved with a bunch of high-stakes gambles that, well, they just didn't pay off.
And this timeline, it really shows what a roller coaster ride it was. I mean, things looked pretty good back in April 2025. You had these talks in Oman being described as constructive, but then boom, that momentum gets totally shattered by the 12-day war in June, a direct clash between Israel and Iran. Then you fast forward to February 2026, and President Trump lays down this super stark ultimatum. You've got 10 days to make a deal, or else. And no surprise, the final talks in Geneva a few days later, they ended in total failure, with the U.S. team just leaving, saying they were disappointed.
Now, what's really interesting here is that Iran actually had a plan. They put this detailed three-step proposal right on the table. They were basically saying, look, we're willing to roll back our nuclear program in a big way. But, and this is a big but, every single step was tied to the U.S. lifting sanctions, unfreezing their assets, and for the grand finale, getting the entire deal approved by Congress.
Okay, so this is where it all fell apart. The talks completely broke down over two massive fundamental disagreements. First up was the scope of the talks. The U.S. wanted to put everything on the table. We're talking the nuclear program, their ballistic missiles, and that whole network of regional militias, their proxies. But Iran just drew a hard line. They said, nope, we're only talking about the nuclear issue, period. And the second sticking point, it was all about where to keep the enriched uranium. The U.S. was adamant it had to be shipped out of the country, while Iran insisted it had to stay right where it was. You can see, just no middle ground.
So with diplomacy officially dead in the water, a new and, frankly, much more dangerous strategy started to emerge from Tehran. Yeah, this wasn't their old playbook of these limited tit-for-tat responses. This was something else entirely. And this quote from CSIS, the Center for Strategic and International Studies, I think it just nails it. Iran made a conscious choice to ditch what they call calibrated retaliation for unbridled escalation. Think about it. In the past, these conflicts were often kind of telegraphed and kept within certain limits. But this time, feeling like they were facing an existential threat, Tehran just started to go big, go fast, and make sure everyone felt the pain.
So Iran's new strategy really rests on two key pillars. First, you've got what's called horizontal escalation. And that's pretty much what it sounds like. It's all about making the battlefield as wide as possible. I mean, get this, in less than 24 hours, Iran's first wave of attacks hit 9 different countries. Within a week, that number jumped to 14. They were spreading the conflict across hundreds of miles, basically trying to turn the entire Middle East into a no-go zone.
Okay, so the second pillar is vertical escalation. And if horizontal is about width, vertical is all about intensity. It's not just about hitting more places, it's about deliberately climbing this ladder of targets, right? Moving from military sites to civilian ones, and using tactics and weapons that are designed to cause maximum disruption.
And you can literally see that ladder right here. It starts at the bottom rung, level 1, going after military sites. Pretty standard. But then it quickly jumps to level 2, hitting civilian spots, like airports and hotels. From there, another leap to level 3. Now they're targeting critical energy infrastructure. And then, the final, and honestly, the most terrifying step, level 4, they start attacking what experts call survival infrastructure. We're talking about things like desalination plants,
the facilities that provide drinking water for millions of people.
Now, what makes all of this possible? Drones. They are absolutely central to this whole strategy. I saw one analyst call them the IEDs of this war, and that's a perfect analogy. It really is. Because think about it, they're cheap, they're pretty easy to make, and they are shockingly effective at causing a ton of damage and chaos for very low cost. And that's especially true when you use them against those soft civilian targets that Iran seems to be favoring more and more.
So, because of this new doctrine, this idea of all-out escalation, the conflict just didn't stay contained. It couldn't. The consequences almost instantly rippled out across the whole region and right into the global economy.
Just take a look at this breakdown of Iran's first wave of attacks. It really shows you how wide they cast their net. Yes, sure, almost half the attacks went after U.S. military bases, but look at the rest. A huge chunk was aimed directly at Israel, and, this is so important, at civilian and energy infrastructure in neighboring Gulf states. We're talking about countries that weren't even directly involved in that first strike.
And then, of course, Iran played its biggest economic card, threatening to shut down the Strait of Hormuz. Just by announcing they were closing it to all shipping, Tehran was basically trying to put a chokehold on the world's energy supply and create as much global pressure as humanly possible.
And believe me, that is not an empty threat. It has real teeth. Just to put that into perspective for you, a staggering 20%, 1/5 of the entire planet's daily oil supply has to pass through that tiny little waterway. Closing it is like having a heart attack for the global economy.
At the same time, Iran also activated its most powerful proxy force, Hezbollah. And this was a major strategic shift. You see, back during that 12-day war in 2025, Hezbollah sat it out. They stayed on the sidelines. But this time, almost immediately they launched coordinated drone and rocket attacks. And just like that, a whole second front against Israel was opened up from Lebanon. A total game changer.
So, with no diplomatic off-ramps anywhere in sight, and with both sides just digging in their heels and doubling down, the huge question becomes, what happens next? Where does this all go from here? Well, analysts are looking at 3 possible scenarios, and honestly, all of them are pretty troubling.
Okay, so let's walk through these 3 main paths. The first one is what they call straight-line escalation. This is basically where the conflict just grinds on. You have these periods where things are quiet, but the general trend is always getting worse. The second scenario, and this is the really dangerous one, is exponential escalation. This is the nightmare scenario where everything just spirals completely out of control, sparking new unforeseen conflicts, say in Lebanon, and causing a catastrophic meltdown in the energy markets. And finally, there's the asymmetric path. In this future, even a badly damaged Iran could use its super resilient drone capabilities to just keep poking and prodding, keeping the whole region unstable for years, making any real recovery impossible.
So, where does that leave us? What does this all mean? Well, it means the old rules are just gone. Those predictable tit-for-tat conflicts we used to see, they've been totally replaced by this new doctrine of all-out, unbridled escalation. And that leaves us with a really sobering question to think about. With deterrence totally shattered and escalation becoming the new normal, are we witnessing the very beginning of a new, generational conflict for the Middle East?
Don't forget to like and subscribe for more How Meets History.